Welcome back to our vintage kitchen, and today we are doing some tweaking and servicing and addition and adjusting of this beautiful 1950s Wedgewood stove. We are doing our best to get this in even better service. It's been doing really well. We've been using one side of the oven and the other one we have not tackled until today. And so in this video we are tackling putting in the pilot of this oven, adjusting all the burners, and just doing a good thorough cleaning, and we'll see what we can do. Welcome to Ridgehaven Homestead. From the mountains of Upper East Tennessee, we share snippets of our off-grid life, cabin build, and garden blessings. Pour yourself a cup of tea, sit back, and take a peek into our off-grid home and family. Everything cool and old and vintage needs some adjustments, and today we are working in our kitchen on my vintage stove. I say we, it's my son Andrew. We're trying to tweak the pilots because they're too tall. He's going to be installing another pilot in our second oven, so hopefully I'll be able to have the use of two ovens, and then he's been doing a little bit of troubleshooting, so we're going to try to look over his shoulder while he's making these repairs and hope that we can get my beautiful stove in a better condition. I really love having this 6-burner double oven 1949 and 1950 Wedgewood antique vintage stove, but here and there we have to make some adjustments to it. And recently, while we've been cooking, the pilots have been, well, the pilot in my oven was too tall and needed adjusting, and so Andrew already looked at that and did some troubleshooting on that in my oven. But we have a new pilot that we need installed. When we were making some repairs, when we first installed this, we were trying to do some troubleshooting, and the original one just literally crumbled. It was rusty, and so we ordered this from an antique stove dealer, and so he's going to see what he can do about getting this installed. And thankfully he's going to look at my burners because the flames are too high and it's burning the bottoms of my pans, and so this is just some maintenance that we need to have happen so that hopefully we can get two sides of my ovens working so that I can make granola and cookies in large amounts, and so that we can just have it working like it should be. While I'm waiting for my son to gather his tools together, I have plenty of kitchen work that can keep me busy for the longest time. I have drawers that I'm in the middle of cleaning out, the breakfast dishes to finish, and just general cleaning stuff that I have to do every day. I thought I would make myself a nice cup of tea, but when I lit the burners, I am reminded that this is the reason why they need adjusted and the whole reason for the troubleshooting. I believe it's worth noting that the burners have slowly become this way over time. They were at a normal height and flame, and just slowly they have inched up, so we know that we need to do some adjusting. All that he is doing is trying to loosen up some of the screws that control the air baffles, and he's making small adjustments which will affect the height of the flame. There are 3 removable enameled steel plates or trays that make up the top of the stove, and so once you remove those, you can get down to where the hookups are for the gas. With the stove being so old and having had it in different storage places even before we got it, naturally some of the screws are rusty and very hard to move, so he spent some of the time trying to loosen them just so that he could do the adjustments. I decided that there was no time like the present to give Miss Betty a thorough cleaning, at least the top surfaces and the trays. So she's getting shined and cleaned, and she'll be ready to go once the gas lines are fixed. I'm just giving her a gentle scrub with the Barkeeper's Friend soft cream and a non-scraping sponge pad, and it takes a little bit of gentle elbow grease to get some of the baked on and cooked on splatters, but she's cleaning up very nicely. I also found that the crumb trays held quite a bit of overspill, and so it was really good to get those cleaned up and shining as well. I will say that because of the seized up screws that were just firmly attached, he did resort to some power tools and got most of them loosened up nicely. We are seeing some improvements in the flame level. We have a little bit more tweaking, but they're looking a lot better, each of them. With our son on the floor, checking out how he could best install that new pilot, I took this opportunity to put the shiny new plates back in, and they were looking so sparkly fresh. It's really an intelligent design to have the 3 enameled steel plates that you can remove to clean up whatever portion you want or to access the different panels. And then under each of the burner sections, there are crumb trays so that you can clean up those and keep your stove nice and clean. These vintage stoves were built for use, they were built for aesthetics, and they were definitely built to last. After the pilot was installed, which really didn't take too long, we had to do the safety checks and adjust the valves, and so here I am pushing the button so that he can adjust it in the oven. Once all that was finished, I whipped up a batch of cornbread, and that was a real treat for a rainy day, baked nicely in my newly adjusted oven. While that cornbread was baking, I decided to whip up an olive salad. This kind of was a treat for us because we don't use the olive salad that much. Olives are just too expensive these days, but we had gotten some at a good deal, so I used 3 different flavors of olives and made the simple olive salad that we all love so much. With those things all ready, all we needed to add was some leftover lentil stew that I had made the previous day to round out our lunch. If you don't have quite enough soup, you can always add a can of this or that, like tomatoes, to stretch it a little. As with the soup, I decided to add one ingredient to stretch the salad a little bit, and I ended up using some flavored, seasoned tofu crumbles, which made it really good. Success, finally. It took a little bit of doing and some fiddling, but now for the first time we have this old beauty. I call her Betty. We have Betty fired up in both ovens, so I can turn on the right side oven and it will light up, and I can bake things in there, in that side. And I can turn on the left side, thankfully now, because Andrew successfully put the pilot in. I was thinking it was going to take like hours and hours for him to do this. It was going to be super complicated, but as it turns out, I was wrong, and he had it in like 5 minutes. Then the other probably hour we spent tweaking the flames, getting all these flames adjusted, because it had been getting a little bit frustrating with too much air coming in, and so my flames were too high. So I'm really, really thankful about Andrew working, and now I can turn on all my flames and I can have a good level of flames. Okay, all the burners were working before, but they were just too tall, and so they would sometimes scorch the bottom of my pans. You can see my teapot here. Maybe it's a little bit dusty as well, but it had just a little bit too much flame. And so periodically we have to do a little tweaking of our vintage stove, but I'm super tickled. And so now I can use all of them at full capacity. The back, if you don't know about this beauty, it has 6 burners. The front 3 are like speed burners, and they cook really high, and the back 3 can also go really high, but they have this simmer plate, which means that you can turn them down very low, and you can literally simmer your food, and it's supposed to keep it from scorching and burning, because rather than just have the flame come up like the usual burner, it has this cast iron plate, and so it distributes the heat, and so it just keeps it's kind of like cooking in cast iron, where you just the whole cast iron pan gets hot, and then you can cook it at a very low temperature to maintain that heat. So I'm actually excited. I did a thorough cleaning of this. I got the top cleaned off. I did all of these enamel trays cleaned out. I even got the crumb trays cleaned out. So everything is spick and span. Well, I did not clean the inside of the ovens, but it was already pretty clean. Miss Betty is shining in her glory. She really is a good stove. And now I'm so happy that I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. And the first thing that I baked with my oven, once it was kind of tweaked, was cornbread, and it did very well. And I'm super excited because now I have 2 ovens. Now you may wonder, why do you have 2 ovens? Why did they make this with 2 ovens? It has 2 ovens, and then below it there are 2 broiler drawers. And so I've never used the broiler drawers yet, but maybe sometime I will. I wanted to find an oven with 2 ovens, because I just thought that was a pretty cool feature. So I have exclusively been using this side, and it's been doing well. I've baked cookies and some bread and biscuits and cake and stuff like that. So it is smaller than a regular conventional oven. Our ovens
nowadays are pretty big. But back in the late 40s and early 50s, when this stove came out, they wanted to be very efficient. They wanted to save energy and obviously gas. And so you could cook in one side or you could bake in another, and you wouldn't have to heat up the whole thing, and so you could use less gas that way. And then when it came time to like a huge meal like Thanksgiving or Christmas, you could fill them both. And so the first thing on my agenda, we did the cornbread, is I plan to make a nice load of granola. I bought this from a lady who had bought it from the original owners. And so the man had given it to his wife for their wedding anniversary, I think it was. And he bought the stove for her, and he bought the double drain board sink for her, and they owned them until they died. And then this other lady got the stove and the sink from them. I think it had been in their family, I'm guessing about 75 years. I believe the stove is about 80 years old. I don't know the exact year of the stove because there have been a little bit of discrepancies between people that I've asked. Some say 1949, some say 1950 or 51 even, but they were kind of going with 1949 as probably the date that the stove was manufactured. And the sink was purchased at the same time, at the, just a little bit after World War II, when things were made sturdily. People were expanding their households. People were excited about finally having a house to own. And so during the early 50s and late 40s, the sturdy and bigger appliances for the kitchen started becoming a little bit more popular, and people put a lot of value in home cooking and things that they could do to make their home a lovely place. And so I'm very impressed with the workmanship of the stove and the sink. They've lasted a long time, and as long as we are really careful with them, I think they will last a lot longer. I did take my drainer off of my double drain board sink last night, and it makes it look so much bigger. I did have the black drainer sitting on this part of the drain board, and I just decided I want to see the whole thing. It just makes my kitchen seem more spacious. I just really like my sink, and it's kind of a joy doing dishes. And I wondered if, when we first got it, if it would be too shallow, but honestly, it's not even something that I think about now at all. We have the faucet that comes up, and I've never run out of room in the sinks. Yeah, washing dishes by hand, it's kind of back to basics, but I don't mind being simple. I don't mind living like this, and I certainly don't mind having a little bit of a blast from the past with my vintage appliances and all the little vintage touches in my kitchen. I just like the beauty and the nostalgia. Let me know if you like nostalgia too, and until next time, God bless you, be safe, and stay well.